Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play this video and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that are being done right and or done wrong.
Thanks everyone for being here for today. We're going to go over two officer-involved shootings, our two most recent for the department. One occurred on June 24th at 198th Street Northwest. The other one was on June 29th at 905 Louisiana Boulevard Northeast. Before the matter gets started, we're going to have Chief Medina say a few words.
Just want to thank everybody for being here today, and we're going to be reviewing two officer-involved shootings, and both of these officer-involved shootings have some things that are similar to one another. First of all, there are officer-involved shootings that occurred in the public and where we had citizens right in the middle of these incidents, and it is of a concern to us. Second, it's involving individuals that had both drug histories, arrest histories, were repeat offenders in the system, so to speak, and they were individuals that we were dealing with to take into custody a second time. One of them was extremely violent and had a history of assaulting others, and they'll talk about the fact that this individual had already stabbed a city bus driver previously in the past and had stabbed somebody who was trying to obtain help. While we're going to see that there's a concern for the citizens who were stuck in the middle of this, we're also going to see some acts of heroism from some of our officers, as you see the video where one of our officers actually closes the distance and seems to be trying to cover the citizen that is below them as shots are being fired. And there's also other things that are concerning that we're going to have to take a look at in terms of our tactics, how we deploy deadly force, and ensure that we're doing everything we can to correct or work on anything that we see as an issue. Last year we had 18 officer-involved shootings, and as we had those shootings towards the end of the year, we had a review of all the 18 shootings, and one of the criticisms that we heard from the community...
18. So, I don't know much about Albuquerque, but that does seem like a lot. And that's not trying to throw any shade to the police. The police are being forced to have to do this by people. So, it really makes me wonder, like, what is the political landscape and how that affects the judicial system there. Do they have a bunch of liberal judges who are releasing people out in the community when they do not need to be released, etc.? Here in Kentucky, that is the case in Louisville. Louisville is very liberal, and they have a lot of liberal judges, and they release people left and right. Now, Louisville police are not getting into all kinds of officer-involved shootings or anything like that, but the crime rate is extremely high in Louisville. The murder rate is freaking out there up in Louisville. So when you get into these kind of Democratic ran cities where they're very liberal, you tend to see higher crime rates. So that makes me wonder if that's what's going on. I will say that having seen some Albuquerque police officer-involved shooting videos, I like the way they're trained. I can tell they've been trained pretty well. And so it could be that the police there are still allowed to be the police. Like, they're not being neutered. They're not having their hands tied behind their back. And so you've got these really bad people being released out in the community. The police are still being the police like they need to be. And shit's just happening.
And I think it was actually the Journal who brought it up at one point in time and said, why did we take so long? We do listen to the community, we do take their advice, and I thought that was a great question. Why did it take us so long? And since last year I announced that we would be doing this every 6 months. So when the 6-month period of the end of June came up, I talked to Deputy Chief Lowe and I asked her for us to start doing a review of the previous 6 months shootings, as we will do every 6 months going forward as long as I'm Chief of Police. So we're going to be waiting for some results from that to see what kind of recommendations they made. I know that last year's recommendations, several of them were addressed, and there are some things that we've made progress on. And if there's any questions at the end, I think Deputy Chief Lowe could address where we're at in terms of that first initial review. As always, we warn the public and remind them that some of these videos can be graphic, they can be difficult to watch. And we do this in an abundance of transparency. And I do know that there are questions at times referenced, especially the second shooting. Unfortunately, I wasn't in town, and we have made some changes, and Gilbert's sent some stuff out to the media and how media briefings will be handled in the future. So we hope that improves our communication and our ability to be transparent with the public, and we will continue to move forward and make adjustments and improve when we need to. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Acting Commander Kyle Hartsock.
Hi, my name is Commander Kyle Hartsock. I'm in the Investigations Bureau. We're going to cover two different officer-involved shootings today. The first one was June 24th, 2023 at 198th Street Northwest here in Albuquerque. This critical incident community briefing will provide information about a male who pulled a gun and fired towards officers and the public as he ran from police, which resulted in an officer-involved shooting. You're about to see relevant video footage, hear 911 audio, look at photos, and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to this case so you can have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The APD conducts very thorough criminal and use of force investigations, which typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, review hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still at the early stages of this investigation, which can often take several months to complete. Our understanding of the incident may change as this additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We also do not draw any conclusions about whether the officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until the facts are known and the investigation is complete. There was 4 officers involved and discharged their weapons in this first shooting. The first was Sergeant Gianfranco DiPaolo. He's been with APD since April of 2015. He has no prior officer-involved shootings, and he, like all the officers today at the time, were assigned to the Southwest Area Command. The second officer is Anthony Trujillo. He was hired in 2016, has no prior officer-involved shootings. The third officer was Officer Brandon Perez. He was hired in 2016. He has no prior officer-involved shootings. And Officer Damian Dudnow, who was hired in August of 2020 and has no prior officer-involved shootings. These officers are currently not back to full duty, but are expected to return soon. The person who was shot was 41-year-old Mark Edward Peter of Albuquerque. The incident took place in the Southwest Area Command near 98th Street in Central Northwest. The incident began when an employee it started at an AutoZone. There's 2 shopping centers right across from one another. This incident started at the AutoZone and ended up at the El Mesquite Market across the street. So as you watch the videos, this will help you kind of know where you're looking. Call to police came in around 3:24 p.m. that day from someone at the AutoZone in reference to a male subject that was slumped over a steering wheel with the vehicle running for over 2 hours. We're going to play you part of that call right now.
2 hours? Yes, I have a vehicle in my parking lot. I went to AutoZone on 98, and I have a gentleman that's been slumped over in his vehicle for about 2.5 hours. What's your address there? 131 98th Street. He's to the AutoZone? Correct. Is he?
Officers were able to get information from the caller and able to determine the license plate of the vehicle. And upon their research before they made contact with the subject or tried to, they found several similar calls to police involving this car and a male slumped out inside the vehicle. Previous police calls when we contacted that car showed that a person by the name of Mark Peter, who was the registered owner of the vehicle, was also the subject found in the car, and that he possibly had a felony warrant for his arrest. Another witness told officers as they arrived they had seen the male passed out inside the car and that he appeared to have a knife in a shirt pocket or multiple knives somewhere on his shirt pocket as he sat in his car. Officers did check, and they did able to confirm that Mark Peter was the listed owner of the vehicle and at the time had multiple felony warrants out for his arrest. At around 3:44 p.m., the officers devised a plan to give public announcements to the occupant of the car for him to exit the vehicle and come over to police. PAs were given until the vehicle with Mark Peter driving started to drive away at about 4:08 p.m. In total, PAs were given for over 14 minutes before the car drove away from officers. Officers had set up stop sticks in the parking lot. If you're not familiar with those, it's a technology that just allows, if a car drives over it, it's going to safely, slowly deflate the air from the tires, which makes the car harder to operate, especially at any kind of high speeds. The vehicle did drive over the stop sticks, but continued to leave out of the shopping center and cross the street to the other side, where it parked in front of Family Choice Dental. Officers observed the driver, Mark Peter, exit and start walking south towards the El Mesquite Market. So if you look at where the dental office is, he walked behind the shopping center towards the El Mesquite Market. So not through the parking lot, but on the back side of those stores. The supervisor on scene was setting up a perimeter and was asking for less than lethal tools to come up. Officers gave commands to Peter to surrender and to stop walking. He did not comply with any of these orders. He was verbally talking back to the officers, but he just did not stop trying to get away from them. He comes around the corner, and you'll see on the video, walks into the entrance of the supermarket. Unbeknownst to the officers at that time, while they had seen a knife around his neck, like on a necklace, they did not know that he was armed. As he enters the shopping store, he starts to pull a gun from somewhere on his body and turn and produce it towards the officers. One of the officers fires a taser at Peter before they realize that he has a gun on him. The taser actually connects with Mark Peter for approximately 2 seconds, according to the taser log. During this time, Mark Peter is still able to turn and fires a shot, nearly hitting the officer in his torso or head that's firing the taser at him. At that point, that induces an officer-involved shooting where those 4 officers fire. A second officer did deploy with a taser during the shooting that you'll see, but the taser logs show it did not have a positive connection during this incident. Officers moved into positions that tried to limit any firing of their weapons towards the back of the store. As you'll see on the videos we show you, this store was very much populated and in use at the time. It's right near all the cash registers when they walk in. And the shooting continues. At this point, we'll go and start to show you the videos. This first one is showing Officer Perez.
So they talked about this dude being spotted in a vehicle, slumped over, passed out. He had a warrant out for his arrest, so obviously they're going to take him into custody. But since the vehicle's running, they chose the tactic of putting stop sticks under the wheels. I think that's a good tactic. If you've got a vehicle stopped, not stopped, but the vehicle is parked, it's, someone's in it passed out, that's good. Put those stop sticks under those tires. That way, if they decide to take off, boom, they're not going to go very far past that point. I think it would also be a decent idea to put a vehicle to the front and to the rear of the suspect vehicle, bumper to bumper on each side, to have them blocked in.
Giving PA announcements to Mark Peter as he is still passed out in the car. We're just going to play a small sample of that.
In the Black Dog Journey, this is the Albuquerque Police Department. You are not free to leave, and you are under arrest at this point. Stay in the vehicle and place your empty hands above your head. Mark Peter, we know you have felony warrants and you are under arrest at this point. We consider you armed and dangerous. Do only what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. Any movements other than those directed may be perceived as an active threat or resistance and may result in use of force.
This next video is from Sergeant DePaulo. You will see in this video, Mark Peter, in the same vehicle he was in, just pulls out and against the officer's commands, drives away, but you'll see him drive over the stop sticks and you can actually hear the air slowly leaving the tires as he drives away from officers.
Six. Behind cover. Behind cover. Behind cover. You got a 42. Hey! Get your stop sticks. Go get in the car.
This next video is from Officer Trujillo. Officer Trujillo is one of the first officers to confront Mr. Peter while on foot behind the shopping center. He is also armed with an AR rifle that he will fire during this incident, and he also is the officer that successfully tases Mr. Peter. We're showing you this video first, although it doesn't give you the clearest picture of the shooting, but he's the first one to make contact with him. Other videos will give you a much clearer picture of how the shooting unfolds.
Hey, right there, Albuquerque Police Department, stop! Stop right there, put your hands up! Albuquerque Police Department, stop! You're not free to leave! Put your hands up! Stop right there! Put your hands up! Stop! 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 You're not free to leave! You're not free to leave! Stop! Put your hands up! He has a knife on him. Stop! Don't reach! You're not free to leave! Get on the ground! You're not free to leave! Give me a 40. Give me a 40 up here. Get a 40, come on! Watch his hands. Don't let him go in. Don't let him go in. Stay on the ground! Taser, taser, taser! Let go!
This is the video from Sergeant DePaulo. Again, this is after Mark Peter had driven away, parked, and fleeing on foot. And the video you just saw, that second officer you see start to come up, that's the sergeant. So right now we're going to show you his video.
I need to get with the driver's speaker and like that. There's one that you that watching so. Let's set up a lock. Set up a lock.
Get on the ground! Don't reach for anything! Get on the ground! Don't reach for anything! He's got knives. We're going southbound towards Mesquite Deputy or Super. Calm, lock it down. Get on the ground now! You're not free to leave! Give me a 40. Give me a 40 up here. We're still going southbound. Watch his hands. Don't let him go in. Don't let him go in. Get out of there! Get on the ground now! He's got a gun! Hey! And now! Fuck. Get up. It's okay. Keep eyes on him now! Get up. Good. Keep eyes on him now. Watch his hands. Reload. Wait. I'm reload. Stop. Here. Move. Check your stuff. Good. You guys good? Yeah. All right. Let's go. Who's got gloves? Let's go, Angel. We're moving. Let's get handcuffs. Come on. Get out of here. both of you.
Somebody cut that strap.
Can you know his ankles?
Couple things to note on that video. In the sergeant's interview, he stated when the shooting started, he purposely moved himself to that cashier station to the right to try to limit any of his shots going into the back of the store where customers were. So that is why you see that real aggressive movement in there. The other part to point out is the offender's gun, and we'll show you a close-up picture of it. It's in lockback position, which is what a firearm does when it's out of ammunition. And again, we'll have other video that shows him firing it. So the suspect fired the gun, we believe, all the way till it was out of ammunition during this incident. This next video is from Officer Perez. He also attempts to use a taser. It appears to be ineffective. He transitions to a handgun and he does fire. Here's his video. And here's Officer Dugnow, who does fire his weapon. This is a still photo from Officer Trujillo's video. This is the officer that tased Mr. Peter as they walked in. In the red circle, you can see the firearm that Mark Peter was in possession of during this incident and fired. In the yellow box, you can see the leads coming from the taser. Those are the wires going out and connecting with Mark Peter. And again, the taser reported a positive connection for approximately 2 seconds. But as the offender produced a gun, was still able to fire his gun while being tased, the officer gave up the taser and transitioned to a firearm. This is the surveillance video from the store. While there's no audio, this does show a very clear kind of bird's eye view of how this takes place. I'm going to play it one more time and point out two things. One, the offender, as he's pulling the gun, his back is to the officers, which we believe is why there's a delay in them understanding there's a gun involved. But you can see Officer True actually move his head like this. When we match up the audio, that first shot Mr. Peter fires, we believe goes right by the officer's head, and you see him react to it while holding the taser. Second, you can see the glass falling down. We believe that's from Mr. Peter's gun, which is now just firing kind of errantly up and around, and it's hitting the ceiling and knocking debris down. This is a still photo from that surveillance video you just saw. In the red circle, this is one of the first moments, at least from the video's point of view, we can see the firearm being pulled out and manipulated by Mr. Peter as officers are trying to apprehend him. This is an overview photo outside the El Mesquite. You can see our evidence markers marking casings, projectiles, and impacts from the two tasers that were used. A total of 59 casings were located on this scene. 36 of them were 9mm from handguns. 10 of them were .223 rounds from our AR rifle, and there were 12 other different branded 9mm casings that we believe are all fired from the suspect's gun. So at this point in the investigation, we believe the suspect fired 12 times at us. There was another round casing found that doesn't match any of the ammunition types of ours or his main, and we're still determining if we think that came from his gun or if it just came from somewhere else. This photograph just highlighting the 2 tasers that were utilized during the incident. They were thrown to the ground and remained on scene as the officers transitioned to their firearms. A total of 21 impacts were located inside the store. They're from Mark Peters' weapon and officers. We also recovered 32 projectiles from inside the store. This is the firearm that Mark Peter had and had fired during this incident. It had not been reported stolen, and we are still investigating its origins at this point. No knife leads were tied to this gun at the time that we tested it of this shooting. A search warrant was conducted on his vehicle that he fled from officers in. We recovered another 9mm round, 45 caliber ammunition as well, some cell phones, and a BB airsoft gun. One interesting kind of thing we found while investigating him is in April of this year, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department actually had a very similar run-in with Mark Peter at a retail shopping center in the South Valley where he was passed out in a car. In that instance, he also refused to exit the car, but finally did and was placed under arrest peacefully when he surrendered. He also had a firearm and fentanyl drugs on him during that arrest. He went to the hospital, I believe, that day, but the Sheriff's Department had issued a warrant for his arrest. That was one of the warrants he had at the time of this incident, was for the Sheriff's Department contact with him. Again, the person that was shot was 41-year-old Mark Edward Peter, and he was pronounced deceased on scene. I'm going to go ahead and go into the second shooting, and then we'll let you guys ask questions on both. The second shooting happened June 29th, 2023 at 9:20.
Okay. So, back this all the way up.
Get on the ground, don't reach for anything! He's got knives, we're going southbound towards Mesquite City, or Super, calm, lock it down. Get on the ground now!
The officer had a rifle out, the other one did. And he has this pistol. The guy's not moving that fast. It's conceivable that this officer could have pulled his taser out and as that guy was coming around the front of the vehicle, fire tasers into this dude. Could that have made a major difference? I don't know. Possibly not. There is a failure rate with tasers coming from the probe contacts or lack thereof, as most of the time occurs. But that's a possibility.
Ow! You're not free to leave! Give me a 40! Give me a 40 up here. We're still going southbound. Watch his hands. Don't let him go in. Don't let him go in. Get out of there! Get on the ground now! He's got a gun!
He practically moves downrange of the other officer who is shooting. So there is a crossfire scenario at this point. Right? This officer goes down. He's over in here. He moves there. This is now a crossfire scenario. I don't think that him moving into that position was a good choice. I don't think that offered him any advantage whatsoever. I would say that due to fight or flight kicking in and him having tunnel vision, he probably could not see that this officer had changed his position and was now over here. He was probably focused on the threat, focusing on his sights and shooting. Now, when you do watch his camera, you do see that this shopping cart is kind of a bit of a barrier of sorts. When he does move over this way, he's now having to shoot over top of this thing. So I just don't think that moving into this position was the greatest position to be taking. I think it would have been better if he fired from here, shot through the cart into the guy, or just moved to the side here and started shooting him from this way. Back this up just a little bit more. So this guy, I think, because he fired this taser and he did achieve NMI, I think this guy locked up from the NMI and fell down to the ground. I think that probably saved him and the other guys right there who were right there near him, because this guy was unable to fully accurately aim the gun, because I think he was experiencing the effects of NMI. It's also even plausible that him pulling the trigger at that moment was not even his conscious decision to do. I think he was going to pull the trigger. I think he intended to shoot at these police, but in that instant, I think the taser deploying into him may have been what caused him to actually shoot.
Not free to leave! Give me a 40!
He locks up from taser. He falls. So I think that the taser, or him being locked up like that and him contracting his muscles, I think that's probably what caused him to shoot the gun. Had he not been tased, I still think he would have shot that gun. I think he would have deliberately aimed it at the officer and pulled the trigger to shoot the officer. So I think this officer got lucky by firing this taser into this guy and causing him to lock up with NMI and fall to the ground. However, I don't think that tactics-wise that was the best thing for him to be doing. He had the best weapon to be fighting with. He had the rifle. The other guy, the sergeant, he's the one who should have had his taser out, because he did not have a rifle. It makes no sense to me to take your best weapon out of the fight just to bring a less lethal weapon into it. So this is a fortuitous outcome. They got lucky on this one, I think.
This is the surveillance video from the store.
So pay attention to the woman in the pink. Pay attention to her. Throughout this entire ordeal, she stands here as this gun battle blazes around her. And also that dude that was cowering right there behind the register. Like, she had the means to crawl her ass up over this thing and try to get the hell out of there. That dude could have peeled out of there and crawled out and ran that away. This is fight, flight, or freeze kicking in. They froze in place. Some people will do that. It's just a response. It's just people stand there in fear. They don't move. Like I said, she had the ability to crawl over that counter, get out of there. So did the guy. The guy could have very easily just swung around where he was and got on out of there. But they were overcome with so much fear, I think, that they just froze in place.
Of how this takes place.
Of course, this guy, the customer, he backs out. He gets out of there. That guy right there, who was right there in the back of it, he takes flight. He gets the hell out of there. And then this woman right here, she takes flight and gets on out of there. So other people who are even way closer than what these two were able to take flight out of there and move. These two just kind of froze in place. I like how he gets this rifle out. Hold on. Let's see if I back this up. So watch this dude's foot. Bam. He takes a hard hit in that foot. So yeah, watch. It's going to be his right foot. It's going to be the foot closest to the side over here. Just watch it. Bam. He's not going to be able to walk that one off. Now, let's talk about targeting here. So, can this officer see this dude's center mass? Can he fire straight into his chest to hit the heart? Can he fire into his head to hit the brain? No. So, what is his point of view? What does he see from down here? He sees this guy's feet, legs, and his groin area. So, think about where these rifle rounds are going. They're going into his feet, and I think that's what popped that foot right there. What you see, that exploding image. I think a rifle round hit that foot. But the rest of these rifle rounds are going into this guy's ass. Going into his buttocks area, his groin, his legs, and he's eating them up from the bottom. When you look at firearms training, that is not a typical target. Like there are no paper targets out there that I'm aware of that shows a person's ass as the target. Like there's no, that I just don't think those exist. Like your typical targets are, like the cardboard IDPA targets. If you've got targets out there that have like a photo image of a person holding a gun, it's going to be like that dude with the 80s long hair and the tank top, and he's got like this revolver or something in his hand, or you got the woman, or you got like a no-shoot target, a little kid or something. Like very easily identifiable targets. It's the quintessential squared off to you kind of target. You can shoot the chest, shoot the face, everything. There are no targets out there that I'm aware of that show these odd positions that you could find yourself in and seeing. There was another video, I forgot what it was, but the dude had like fell down or so, I can't remember exactly what it was, but the dude's ass was just pointed towards the officer shooting, and that was his target. That's all he had to shoot at, was this dude's ass. And I remember talking about the same thing in that video, that no targets like that exist. But it is something that you need to think about. That is a real possibility. A threat could land in an awkward position, and the only thing you have to target is that their buttock region, their feet. So, where would the best place to be shooting at this point? Well, into their buttock area. Shooting, sounds bad to say it, shooting into their butthole, into their groin. That's going to send those rounds, hopefully, through the pelvis into the abdominal area and straight up into the heart and lungs, like a skewer, kind of like how you see like a small animal or something with a stick rammed all the way through it, from butt to mouth and put over a fire, right? Like, imagine your bullets doing the same thing. You're trying to go through that opening in the bottom of the body and go all the way out the top. Now, are those rifle rounds able to go all the way through all that and come out the top? Probably not if he's using the hollow points. But you're going to be able to put those rounds pretty deep into that person's body and hopefully reach them up into the thoracic cavity and hit the lungs and heart. If not, then sending them into the butt region. There's lots of arteries down in that area, lots of blood vessels in the pelvic girdle. You're definitely going to cause massive bleeding shooting into that area. I would say that him being proned out, and he's got a pretty good prone position too. I'd say him being proned out at this plane right here, I'd say he probably put all his rounds into this guy. If he missed any of them, then I would say that, oops, went too far back. If he missed, then look at this line right here. Straight line to here. That officer is right there. If he missed any, then he had to have missed this guy by mere inches or centimeters. And the other guy who's hiding right behind here. So I think this guy was probably most likely really spot on with his shooting. Like I said, if he missed anything, then he missed them by mere inches or centimeters. You can see this overhead light here, I guess, from this dude's just pumping rounds out. You see, like, how else is this going to fall out? Like, obviously this guy's just popping rounds and hit the ceiling and busted this light out and it's falling down on the ground.
I'm going to play it one more time and point out two things. One,
now think too, so he fires his taser, so 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. So there's a good possibility that this taser is still cycling. Even though he's dropped it out of his hand and it's hit the ground, it's still probably going to. And now he's having to get his rifle out, lay over top of this thing as it's probably still going to, and then put rounds on target. You see that foot just explodes. Fucking ate his ass up. This guy had like this weird. It's kind of like a weird fetish with knives. Like, who wants to have this many knives on them? And this also looks like a baton. Yeah, I think that's what that is. I think that's an ass baton right there. You got this long knife right here. You got this, looks like a knife right there. Of course, he had his gun. I don't get into the whole knife thing. Like, there are people out there who are like all about knives. They're different. They really are. I don't know how to further expound upon that. I've just, over the years, I have noticed that people who carry multiple knives like this are just fucking weird people. They really are. Or people who keep a freaking katana sword above their fireplace. Like, they're just different.
At the store. This is the firearm that Mark Peter had, and it fired during this incident. 45
Taurus. So his van. So these little yellow things right here. These are evidence seals. They're putting seals on the vehicle to show that at the time they got to the vehicle, they inspected it, they've sealed it, and it remains sealed until they open it up at another point. So this seal right here is the seal the hood. I'm sure there's probably another one on the other side and to the front right here. That way, if the seal's broken, they would know that someone went in there and tampered with something. Same with the doors here. So there's a seal there and a seal there. This right here is actually to mark the window so that the window has not been tampered or opened with. And this right here is to show that the door has not been opened, as is this one's to show the door has not been opened. And again, window to window, door. Looks like the fuel port right here. They've got that sealed up with a marker, and then you see more right there. So that's just a chain of custody thing. So eventually they would have gotten a search warrant to go inside this vehicle and to look around. But until then, they seal the vehicle, no one gets in it, and then they'll put it on a tow truck, and the tow truck will take it to wherever it needs to go, and it'll stay there, and it will remain sealed until whoever comes through to do the scene processing of the vehicle. I wish they would have gone into this dude's criminal background. I'd say there's probably some stuff there, most likely. People who end up doing this stuff end up having a criminal background. It's not like they just were living a good life, crime-free, being a good person, and then just one day decided that they were going to turn and point a gun at police officers. So at some point, this guy has had run-ins with the police before, and I would not be surprised to find out if he's had multiple run-ins with the police. Why is he sitting in his car sleeping? He's probably homeless. Him having done this before, it's odd, right? It's super odd. It's not normal behavior, and it's just indicative that this guy has really no good positive control over his own life, and is not a good contributing member to society.
On both cases, over the next several months, the police department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. We'll continue interviewing any new witnesses that come forward and complete any forensic test. After the investigation is complete, our Force Review Board will forward the findings to the Superintendent of Police Reform to determine if these incidents met the high standards of the Albuquerque Police Department. The MATF will forward the case to the District Attorney's Office, who will make any determination of criminal charges, and will help answer any questions.
Were any non-lethal methods employed with this second shooting on the Louisiana bus stop?
None were fired during that incident.
Gotcha. Why not? before the shooting commenced? With the first incident, you saw the taser being...
I'll let Chief handle.
You know, I think if you look at the video, and of course those are questions that are going to come up, but when we're talking about less lethal, it's always was the feasibility and were we able to utilize less lethal given the situation. When you look at it, you could tell that, number one, this incident evolves very quickly. It goes from some officers walking on foot to 2 police cars passing them, and then it is a matter of seconds before you hear them giving the individual orders. And if you look at the video closely, you'll see the suspect actually touches one of the victims on the back. And I was concerned, and I even asked the question, did he stab him? Because you could see that he clearly was already touching this individual. And we will have to determine if it was feasible for them to utilize less lethal, or if this escalated so quickly that less lethal was not an option during this situation.
What are the protocols for shooting a suspect like that when bystanders are so close?
You know, we have 4 firearm rules that is ingrained in our mind during the academy, and every single officer knows those 4 rules. Number 1, all guns are always loaded. Number 2, do not let your muzzle cover anything you're not willing to destroy. Number 3, be sure of your target and what is beyond it. And when we talk about the last 2 in particular, those are questions that we're going to have to answer during the administrative investigation. It's like, what was in line? What were the officers' perceptions? What was going through their mind at that time? So we do have to answer some of those questions, and when the investigation comes out, we should have some answers as to what the officers are observing, why shots were fired, what they saw, and why it was necessary at the moment with these individuals in line with them.
Do you happen to know what prompted the second round of shooting then that took place?
If you look at the video, you can see the individual is still within arm's reach of the victim that I talked about earlier, where you can see he actually puts his hand on the right side of his back. You can see they're still within distance. The officers are still giving orders. You hear them asking, bring a 40 up. A 40 is less lethal. So the officers are asking for less lethal to get there. So we are happy that they were trying to transition to less lethal. The investigation will have to show and the officers will have to justify. But from the video, what I could see is that you could see the individual had turned back around, had gotten on all 4s, and the officers are going to have to give their perception of what occurred and why they deployed deadly force again at that point.
How many times was each of the other 2 people shot, and what are their current conditions?
Kyle, do you have specifics? I think one was shot. The main one that went down that was most injured, I believe, was 4, and the other one was once in the knee. The one in the knee has been released, and the one with 4 is still in the hospital.
Or is rehabbing like an
Or-
inpatient? He's an inpatient.
Yeah, no, they're expected to survive.
I think 6 wounds, is that right?
Yes, it's correct, and he's waiting at the hospital to go to another.
Okay.
He's spoken to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's
Were
stable.
those men transients? Do you guys know if they were transients or if they were?
I don't know
Did-
their sheltered status right now.
Given the fact it's 3 in the morning, there's no bus service, I think it would be safe to say that the individuals may have been unhoused.
Last year you mentioned there was 18 officer-involved shootings. What's
Yes.
the number right now?
We are at 7?
7.
7 officer-involved shootings, 3 fatal.
And 3 fatal, you said?
Yes.
A follow-up on bystanders. What is the protocol when people like that are injured? Do you guys pay for their hospital bills, or what is that?
That is something that goes through city risk management, and city risk management will make determinations and work with them. One thing that I did talk to Commander Vega about is we wanted to make sure we got resources out to them immediately from the city, and he assured me that resources were immediately provided in terms of giving them the support that they needed.
Going back to the first shooting, does that count as well for the damage done in the mesquite market? Does that fall into that category as well?
They would go through a risk management process and proceed. A lot of times, in general, we are going to end up paying for it as a city. Matt?
How did Salyers know the initial victim that he was in the car with?
I don't have that information.
The victim said he was wanted to help out a parent transient person he says he does this, he gives people lights and gives them food, and that's all he was doing.
Okay.
Like he had just met him minutes or moments before the stabbing took place.
And he's recovering in the hospital.
He was released.
Oh, okay.
Has OMI released any information to you guys about the toxicology reports for both suspects?
No, but one of the things that we did do is, because I think it's important that we know the toxicology of individuals. And we all know that somebody under the influence of narcotics or other drugs sometimes can be have different behavior than those that are not. So one of the things that we are doing now is we are making sure that we do have those toxicology reports eventually provided to us, and it generally takes about 6 months, George. 6 months. But we recently did get some toxicology reports on other officer-involved shootings, and I think they showed all that almost everybody involved in those were under the influence of some kind of drug or alcohol.
We're gonna have a news conference.
We'll have a news conference. We'll talk about all this. Kind of like what we did at the end of last year, at the end of 18. We're kind of planning something like that in the near future to talk about these first 7 of 2022. Yes, Matt.
With the El Mesquite Market one, I'm sure you guys have analyzed it, and I don't know if you guys have dug this deep. It was kind of fast. Do you know if at any point officers were firing either in the direction of people or at each other? At one point, it's like one officer gets on the ground with a rifle and he's kind of firing this way. There's another officer on this side. Has that been looked at all? And is that something you guys have come to?
That's something they're going to be looking at. There's something that's going to be come out during the course of the investigation. From the video itself that I see myself, there were just people all over. And I think it's going to be very hard for us to say that there weren't citizens who were there. But also, it's one of those, if you look at it, and the one word, if I could use one word to describe both scenes, chaos. I mean, you could clearly tell that these incidents escalated rather extremely quickly. And all of a sudden, the urgency became the subject's going into the El Mesquite Market. This subject is actively chasing these individuals armed with a knife. Officers had to make quick decisions, and it is very chaotic with the amount of individuals that are involved and the fact that they're taking into account the citizens who are in the general location of the subject that's armed with a firearm.
How many rounds did Peter fire?
I believe I was told 12.
12. We feel confident it could have been 13.
Okay, but at least 12.
At least 12. And I think it's important to note that Mr. Peter chose the location to pull the gun and fired at officers. Mm-hmm. Officers were actually trying to give him space and time to safely get taken into custody, and he chose that escalation path in a very crowded supermarket.
Do you think this will bring about training that will look at this? Because I mean, I feel like I've been covering police shootings for a bit, and I haven't seen one necessarily that was kind of like both of these. And you think that's going to be kind of something you guys will look at for like training with like crowded?
Yes, and that's something that right off the bat when these came up, myself and Deputy Chief Lowe spoke about. She's in charge of the academy now. Was that we really want to get to the point where we're using incidents that happen with the Albuquerque Police Department to drive our reality-based training, and we're putting officers in the exact same scenario that their fellow officers have been in the past, and we use that as a teaching point to see how we start carving out behavior. These are two, like you said it, Matt, like of all the years that I've been here, it's not very frequently that we see that citizens have been so close to what's occurring, and in both of these situations the offender purposely went, and to me in a lot of ways was using the public as a shield to try to get away from officers.
Were there, to your knowledge, any bystanders hurt or struck in that first shooting at the market?
No, there were no injuries reported in the thing, but I think it's important that we also talk about that. Like, there may be no physical injuries, but my heart goes out to all those employees because there has to be psychological and mental anguish that is occurring to these individuals because of what they have been exposed to. And I think it's important that we take a look as a community and we talk about this over and over again. And I'm telling you, both of these individuals, in my mind, are individuals that should not have been out in the community in the first place. You stab a city bus driver and you go to jail for 3 years. I just want that to sink in with the community. Like, I've said it over and over again. Substance abusers should be getting substance abuse help. People with mental health concerns should be getting mental health resources. But when an individual crosses the line and becomes violent, it is of the utmost importance, if we're going to make this community safe, that they are held accountable and that they're removed for the appropriate amount of time from the community. This is unacceptable, and we just seen it now in another part of the state where it's just this process of individuals not being held accountable costs human life or puts others in danger.
That city bus driver, she okay?
I think, yes, but he survived. Is he still a bus driver?
I don't know.
I don't know that. But.
Back to the second OIS, I guess depending on whether it's a firearm or any lethal weapon like we saw with the knife there, is it standard to have multiple officers fire at someone? I guess no matter if it's a firearm or a knife.
It is possible, and especially we have to remember that when we have incidents like this, we deploy a lot of officers. But one of the things we are looking at is one of the things that really stood out to me in these incidents is we have to look at how we're going to proceed with this, because right now our policy says, we got to give everybody orders. My biggest concern now is we now have 8-9 people yelling at one individual. And when these situations unfold this way, there's no guarantee that all those 8-9 people are going to have the same message at the right time. So I think we do have to look to see if there's changes we need to make to ensure that there is one clear order that is being given to individuals, and we are looking at that. That is something we'd have to work with all the parties in our court settlement agreement with to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're meeting all of their needs. But that is just one thing with these large groups that is very concerning to me. And of course, as we get these larger groups, we're going to see larger amounts of shots fired because more officers are discharging their firearm.
And it's unclear if he was actively trying to stab that man or grab him or something. It's not really clear what.
It is. It's very unclear. Like I said, you see him touch him on the back. It's so unclear. But unfortunately, we've had the luxury of sitting here and reviewing 4 different videos. But our officers are out there in real time, and they are jumping out of a car and they're making an assessment, and they're making a decision that they didn't have the luxury to sit back and look at this, think about it, and make a decision based off of that.
Where we're evaluating this, he has a knife in his hand. He is raising the knife above his shoulders and head. We believe he already was willing to use that to stab someone else, and every officer there knew that as they approached him. So there's a little bit more of that context to it.
I have a question about the second rounds that were fired as well. Once he was already on the ground, again, I wasn't there during the moment, I'm watching after the fact, but would it be clear to say you could get up closer to fire shots like that, or do you still think people are in danger firing so far away when he's already down?
One of the things I noticed when you notice, the first volley of shots being fired, obviously we know that some of the victims were in line with the officers. As you proceed to the second round and you start to see that the officers had better angles. So we do know that they were trying to find a better angle at that moment in time, and it's clear from the video that they were trying to. But also at the same time, those are some of the questions that will have to be asked. Was it feasible for us to go hands-on? Were there other options that could have happened? And those are all questions that will take time, and that we'll have to conduct the investigation and get statements from everybody to determine what was appropriate, what was not.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, everybody.
All right, so not much else to talk about with that incident. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense, thank you for watching.